This week on Stubborn Grit.
Vapor barrier will go on the top, down into the footer, and up the side, and it will come up to this edge here. That way we don't have to oil the boards and all that, and it also, the main reason is to keep the entire slab wrapped for the wet cure, to try to equalize the wetness on all sides. That's the idea.
His wife and he are building a house together. Sweat equity. It's like a marriage workshop. Build the dream. How hard can it be? How long will it take? They don't have a clue. They're doing it themselves. Ignorance is bliss. Will they survive? Will their teenagers thrive? What's wrong with you people? Are they crazy? Maybe. Dream big. Don't quit. Stubborn Grit.
It feels like forever ago, from our DIY plans being approved for construction to excavation, building the subbase and base, the forms, footings, and utilities. And now we're finally adding our vapor barrier. Our code minimum is 10 mils in thickness, and we're using a 15 mil product, which should be more resistant to tears and punctures. It should also help with any potential soil gases like radon. We ended up with two 14-foot wide by 140-foot long rolls. We soon discovered that the thicker plastic not only costs more, but it's a bit more difficult to work with. It took more brain power than we expected as well, like how to cut the plastic so it lays flat inside the concrete forms, and laying it all out with as few seams as possible. It reminds me of trying to quickly wrap gift boxes, but having to solve this puzzle from the inside out. So out of the blue, it starts to rain. We quickly begin taping the seams in the bottoms of the footings. It ended up being faster to just prop up the plastic between each section in an attempt to dam up each end. So on the bright side, the rain will be a good test for sealing the plastic vapor barrier, although in the reverse direction. If it keeps raining, we're going to be pumping out a lot of water. It was a bit of a mad dash to get all the plastic sealed up, especially inside the bottom of the footings. Thankfully, the rain stopped. It is supposed to rain more tonight, so we're just trying to finish all the footing seams for the day. Our perimeter footings are holding water for the most part, and our interior footings are doing good, except the weight of the water is pulling the plastic down into the footings. This should help hold all the plastic in place as we continue laying it all out. And there's our sump pump in the corner. We bought this for when we had our utility ditches open. Now we're using it in our footings with the float switch that activates when we're away from the build site. Of course, it only works when the seams are taped up tight. We weren't able to get every seam taped up perfectly or dammed off before the rain, so some of the perimeter footings got wet. We'll be pulling the plastic back in a couple areas to let it dry out. We added some buckets to help hold up the plastic so that it would dam up each end. Also used some scrap PVC pipe to do the same thing as the buckets, and it worked great. So the foundation footings can get wet, but they need to be pumped out as soon as possible. If the water sits there too long, it can loosen up the soil and it'll need to be compacted again. A little water in the footings on concrete pour day likely won't hurt, but too much can weaken the concrete. We're going to be trimming off the plastic running over the forms, but for now we're leaving it long in an attempt to shed the water like a tent. And we still have all our scrap plastic running outside the forms as well. Here you can start to see how the plastic is difficult to smooth out. I think we need to cut out some of the bulkiness and tape it down so it lays flat. We've been throwing all kinds of scraps and such on top of the plastic to hopefully keep the wind from pulling it all up and flopping around. It's still raining off and on, so we'll wait for the sun to come out before pulling back some of the plastic to dry it out. We do try to keep a close eye on the weather, and our youngest daughter does a great job of keeping us informed, but we were all caught off guard on this one. Thankfully, we were able to get most of it covered. And it all looks very messy right now, but there's a method to the madness, or so I tell myself. So we're thinking our soil and rock base is good to go as far as supporting our building loads and then some. In addition to rebar in our footings, we're also adding a rebar mat into the slab floor. We've been talking with a few concrete plants in our area, and we're quickly learning that we're not a big enough job to start customizing their available concrete mixes. For example, I'm wanting to include the larger 1.5-inch rock to help reduce shrinkage cracking, plus it's a bit cheaper. But since the aggregate bins are already loaded up for the most common local mixes, it's looking like it's not going to be practical for us. I'm also trying to avoid all the extras that the concrete plants want us to add to their mixes, like the fiber and superplastizers. I mean, we spent so much time firming up what's below our foundation, I'm thinking we shouldn't need all that, and we'll have rebar to back us up. If we do end up with their more expensive yet familiar concrete mixes, it'll also add some complexity. For example, if we add fiber, it results in a stiffer mix, which requires extra additives to get the mix workable again. But then the concrete sets up very quickly, and the crew has to get it all placed and finished before it wears off. So I'm starting to think we'll end up paying more for all their extra additives for a workable and easier to pump concrete mix. Maybe the crew will be less tempted to start adding too much water to the mix on pour day, which can weaken the concrete. So yeah, a lot to think about before we pull the trigger, and more rain in the forecast.